Welcome, Dr. Kavery. She's not the only doctor here. I am also a doctor, but she's a real one. So she's been a surgeon, whereas I'm only a PhD doctor. So the real one is here for you to ask later any questions that you want to ask a writer doctor. Hmm? Um, the moment I say she's a writer doctor, I'm sure the question in your mind is, what's the connection between the two? Does one impact the other? Does one influence the other? And if yes, in what ways? So let's ask that very predictable question right away and put it behind us, and then get into the more uh, unpredictable questions. So I'll start with that. So which is mightier, your knife or your pen?
That is such a difficult question because I don't want to be disloyal to either. I first became a doctor and then I started writing. But at the same time, I think I was always a writer. You know what I mean? I was, I had that in me, that thing of secretly writing little things, poems and whatever. But and I read a lot. So I think there was something of the writing in me as a child, but I took to writing only after I became a surgeon and I was doing a job which was really one of the busiest I've done in Uttar Pradesh. I was there, and it was sort of a chaotic type of a situation, and you're very busy. But for some reason, I thought I will try my hand at writing. Just small things, middles, and stories in women's magazines, little things. And gradually I moved to, I wrote for children, which I enjoyed very much. And it gave me a lot of confidence in the art of writing, because children need a sort of straightforwardness and honesty that has to be, it reaches them quicker.
Yeah.
And you can't fool children, I think. Maybe you can fool adults. But so that taught me a lot about writing and finding out what my narrative voice is, who I am, more or less. And then I took to adult fiction. But for me, both writing and medicine seem to be, two parallel, I would say, vocations. Because I'm serious about both of them, and I'm committed to both of them.
Yeah.
And I feel that just like being a doctor carries with it a lot of risks, as my doctor friends here will agree. It has a lot of risks. You need a different type of courage to be a doctor. And it's also true of a writer, because a writer is writing down, 500 pages, thinking somebody is going to read it. No, so you need confidence to do that, to think that somebody is going to want to read what you write. So that type of risk taking is there in both professions.
But the nonfiction came later, after, just before this book, right?
Yes.
So
nonfiction for me is actual work, while writing fiction doesn't feel like work. It's little, I don't know, certainly I get more joy out of writing fiction, but I do, whenever I write nonfiction, it is a sort of a commitment, it's a sort of a, I feel, obligation, or when I feel it is necessary, somebody has asked me, then I do it,
you have this book, The Luxury of Health, right?
Yes.
So that's the one book which is directly about your profession.
Yes. That also was my publisher kept asking me to do it, to write about my own career, and but I'd put it away for a very long time, and having signed a contract with them, but I never kept to it. And finally, I was pushed to do it. But once I started and once I got going with it, I was very reluctant to start with. I found it difficult, but once I got into it, it was not so difficult because I was just relating my medical experiences and the life of being a doctor and also working in difficult places, in difficult challenges of medical life. And also I was trying, because mine is over 4 decades, so it is I'm trying to look at the healthcare system through those years.
Yeah.
So that is part of the book also.
While in conversation here before we came here, you were mentioning how you are involved in a kind of an initiative which is about the humanities that doctors need, the humanities training or
Yes.
background or some of the insights
Yes.
from there for doctors.
Yes.
So while we are on this subject, please tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to say that St. John's Medical College has, for the last at least 10 or more than 10 years, been running a Department of Humanities for the medical students and for the faculty. And that humanities, what does it mean? It gives the students and the faculty an opportunity to discover their own selves beyond being just doctors. Like we get as doctors, we get very circumscribed in our preoccupation with the patient and with our work and the competitive world of medicine, and how to build a career for ourselves, get our postgraduate degrees, specialize, and so on. So in that process, there is a lot of stress. It can be an extremely difficult thing because you are dealing with life and death in your profession, and you are having to face so much of stress. And don't forget, doctors also make mistakes. We face failure, and we have to know how to deal with that. So humanities is a way of trying to mentor students and trying to draw them out to discover in themselves certain other interests, and to talk to each other about it, reflect upon it, write, these things we do.
Okay, great. So today we are going to be talking about this book, Rising Suns, about 530 pages. And this came out last year. And this is Kavery's eighth book, eighth novel, that is. And before I say anything, the first thing what struck me was when I started reading it, it felt as though I was reading a Kannada novel, right? And a masterly translation of a Kannada novel in English. That's how I felt. And what she has actually done is the translation of Kannada life in and around us in English. Now, is she the first one to do it? That is, among Indian writers who have written in English, largely up until a certain point, urban space, city life. That was the Delhi drawing room or the Bombay train. Those were the locales for novel setting. But rural realities, a village life, a small life in a small town, these are more recent spaces that people have been writing about. And I would like to claim Kavery as our own writer. When I say our own writer, she, as I said, there are people, writers like Raja Rao, who was a Kannadiga, who wrote in English only. Maybe early he wrote a novel or something like in Kannada, but he's known only as an English writer in English. Then we have R.K. Narayan, who wrote about, like Mysore became Malgudi, etc., that we know, but more Tamil than Kannada sensibility wise, perhaps. And then we have A.K. Ramanujan, who wrote in, who was a scholar of Tamil and Telugu and Kannada and so on. And then we had Girish Karnad, who also was a Kannada person writing in English. And then we have Shashi Deshpande, a contemporary of Kavery, writing about life in a small town like Dharwad, for instance. So, in that tradition, I would like to place Kavery, not just in the larger tradition of Indian writing in English. And I think it's in this novel that the Kannada-ness of her experience. It's a very rooted novel, rooted in Kannada history and Kannada culture, Kannada ethos. And it's a novel which spans nearly 80, 90 years and 3 generations of a family. And it is set in a village. It begins with life in a village 25 kilometers west of Mysore called Kesirgattu, and then it moves on to other smaller spaces around, and then the small town, and then the slightly bigger Mysore, and then from there to Delhi, right? So the kind of spaces covered and the kind of time that is covered in this novel, the canvas is truly, really big. And this kind of an internal migration from a village to a town to a city, from a city to a mega city, is the staple of regional writers, of an earlier era, right? And that kind of writing also constructed the nation for us, imagined India as a nation for us. And here, the period that is covered is pre independence, colonial times, pre independent Gandhian movement, then the post independent Nehruvian India. So, that is the kind of time span that we see here. So, my question is, what was largely considered as the theme and preoccupation of regional writers, or even a writer like Rajarao, who wrote his Kantapura in 1938? Why this kind of a novel at this juncture in our life, in our history, in our world?
I didn't set out, with a clear-cut plan on what I'm writing. I knew, I had thought of a character, this Devaraya, and from a small village. And having just thought of a character, I thought, and putting him in the 1920s or 1910, that time, I was trying to think what his life would be like. Because most novels are created in our minds first, at least a vague picture of it. So I was trying to find out what type of a person he was and what is the village like. It is a imagined village, but very similar to a lot of Karnataka small villages. And then I sort of created the family, and I realized that it was a time when the freedom struggle was just taking off. The Satyagraha movement, all of this. And so I had to, find out what happened in villages during those times. So they obviously heard from newspapers that came to them after a week.
Yes.
One shop would have a newspaper and others would read it, and they would talk and they would find out, and they would discover the world. In spite of that, news traveled, and people came to know what was happening in different parts of the world and different parts of the country. And they, that the idea of having a free country freed from the British began to affect the villagers also. So that is what I was trying to understand at first. And it was exciting for me to think about them, what it was like for them.
Yeah.
So I had a family where there's the husband, wife, and 2 sons and a daughter. And so that type of thing, and what they do, what happens to them. So the freedom struggle was there in the background. Yes. And also what was happening with the British, because this man works in a bank in Mysore as a clerk, Devaraya. So, and then the story goes on. As much as the history is a background in the book, so also caste. caste is a very important factor everywhere in India, even now. But at that time, it was particularly so. And so this village is, of course, facing various social frictions and conflicts and even otherwise positive things that happen in villages. It's not all one-sided or one, it is a very complex, although villages seem very small. This is a village of about 57 families, but
Yes.
there is complexity. There are
Yeah.
people from different backgrounds, different castes and communities, and how do people,
Yeah.
interact, behave, what
Yeah.
happens to education, everything. And then from the village, somebody is going to step out. As Vanamala said, migration happened always.
Mm.
Through history, it has happened for humankind. So migration, people will migrate in search of better things.
Yeah.
And I feel, this word social mobility, upward mobility, what we call, was there always. That aspiration of upward mobility was existed long before the word existed.
Yeah.
And so people did move out, many of them. So some people from the family also move out, get sucked into the freedom struggle. Various things happen. So I'm always staying true to the family and the family's story, while also relating it to other things that are happening during those 90 years in India.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did the inspiration for this kind of a canvas? Usually, like the stereotype about women writers is that they limit their writing generally to the family and personal relationships and the smaller kind of world. Whereas a canvas like this, which is so vast, is very special. So, where did the inspiration for this come from? Does it have anything to do with your own upbringing in a family which is politically
Yes,
invested?
partly that, because I had I had that curiosity in me to know, but also my family was also involved in the freedom struggle, everything. And from Karnataka, starting from, a village and then going out and facing this mm, persons going to prison, including my father. And at a time when my mother was expecting the first child. So this type of thing, the things that families went through during that time, which I think the present generation may not even know, that it was not just Gandhi or Nehru or Patel or the big people, Ambedkar, they were all great men, but there were so many other smaller men and women who got involved, and they drove the momentum.
Yeah.
And from every village, everywhere. And so that is fascinating to think of for anybody. And we are talking of Karnataka, but it was there from all over India. And I was particularly interested in southern India because not much is written about the freedom,
Precisely.
the freedom struggle that was there in southern India.
You're right. I think mainstream writing on the freedom struggle was largely, it is something that came from, let's say, middle class, upper caste, educated male writers.
Yes.
The other stories of the freedom struggle, the smaller places, as you say,
Yes.
that was not heard. The subaltern, for instance, the people who are dispossessed, how did they experience, and what was their participation like? That is an area of silence which not many people have written about, despite we are nearing well past 75 years of independence, and still some of those silences needed to be kind of spoken about. So I think this novel does that. And so when it is Rising Suns, I would like to add it is rising sons of the soil, as we say, ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮಗ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವಲ್ಲ ಆ ಥರ. So it is people who have worked, who have soiled their hands with earth work. Those people are rising. They're able to rise in a kind of as a part of this democratic setup. And if I would like to just a figure that comes to my mind is Shashi Tharoor in 1997. wrote a piece, 50 years of independence. He compared uh, Nehru with Deve Gowda as two prime ministers of the country.
With
And
who?
Mr. Deve Gowda
Oh,
and Nehru.
yes.
He compared them 50 years apart. What has been the kind of figure? Huh? So, like Kaveri has a small mention of Panche. There is an episode with, Dhoti, Panche in the book. So that reminded me so much of this, like there's a description of that. So I won't labor that point further. I mean, if there is interest later, we can talk about it, but to you. So it's a subaltern rising. That is the difference, from mainstream writing, where the subaltern was somewhat quiet and not so articulate. Whereas in a book like this, it is the castes which are oppressed. They also come up, and that is what is talked about, right?
And we're talking about family life as such, and what happens to families when something drastic happens. Families are just a collective group of people, very intimate, facing the good and the bad together. But when something really, really terrible happens to a family, then how do they cope? And that's what is there in the book, part of the book, where it's a stunning thing that happens, which I don't want to reveal right now. But it is, nobody can, it is sort of unbelievable sort of thing. And how do they resurrect themselves? How does the family react? How do they cope with a terrible, devastating sort of thing that happens to them after incident or occurrence? So that is part of the book, and that takes the story bends and becomes a little more dark, I would say, in parts, because there is tragedy, there is pain for the family and for individual members. And then how do they come out of that? Or do they come out of that? That whole thing. But because the freedom struggle also is gaining momentum, so I can't ignore that by this stage. So I do take it forward, and I go into the place where people who have fought in the freedom struggle, who have gone on, some of them have become members of parliament after independence. And so I go into Parliament House to see what happens in Parliament House, and how did people of that era behave, conduct themselves, what happened, what was the frictions, what are the, that's why I have quite a few scenes within the Parliament House. And also I have one which is in the Constituent Assembly, the club. That means the place where the members who drafted the Constitution stayed during those years from 1946 to 1949, when the Constitution was actually drafted, discussed, and finalized. And there were nearly 300 members, 299. And they lived there in sort of small barrack-like house, building. If you saw it in Delhi, you would be amazed that these men were, all these great men were staying there, and including Ambedkar, for instance, spent, long periods of time over there. And so I have a scene there also about Ambedkar and two younger people going to him for inspiration and what he tells them. So it's just a way of trying to find out for myself also what it was like.
Absolutely. They say family is the smallest democratic space. So from that space also to the larger democratic spaces, the book covers so much. And what is very endearing about the book for me are some of these local rebellions that Kaveri has created. She is essentially a great storyteller, you see. So she combines, stories of people, where some of them imagined, some of them real. So I just want to read to you, a real story that happened during the British time, just to kind of show how a writer like her is able to make or weave that into the history of a country and a novel in an absolutely seamless kind of a fashion. So give me a moment. See, I started telling you how basically she's a great storyteller and a novelist who has woven all these into a great novel. So there is a description of a character called Anna who goes deaf because he's exposed to thunder, right? So that description for me is something that uh, it was so disturbing. It really shook me up, you know. So I just thought I would read that part to you. So they're all waiting. There's been a feast, some kind of a ceremony, and different caste people eat at different in different panktis. So they're waiting for their turn. By then, it starts to threaten, the thunder. Summer was at its peak, and the village of mud was hard baked and parched, roads embroidered with beaded, goatly evacuations. Kesarugattu had listlessly waited for the rains, but no one wished for it just then. Oh no. There was anxiety on the faces of those who awaited their turn to eat. Leaden clouds had begun to gather along the southwest, and soon they smothered the sky. A loud firecracker of a sound exploded. Anna shivered. He felt thunder roll inside his head. He rose, took his rolled up leaf plate, washed his hands, and dimly saw the next lot of diners, the cooks and servants, swarming towards the food. Anna rubbed his ear. The would not leave him, and he was certain that a large, shiny blue wasp had entered through his left ear, pierced it, and was running through his brain towards the other ear, and then back and forth and back and forth. Or it was raining pebbles which were pummeling his brain. He stumbled home unnoticed. He went in and lay down feeling utterly sick. So he realizes that his left ear is affected while he can just about, barely hear from the right. So this is a part which I find so lyrical. The nights he lay still, trying to fathom the outer limits of sound, starting with his heartbeat and his breathing, the burble and hum within his gut, the sifting and shifting that happened endlessly inside body tubes and channels. How mysterious, how illustrious, how grim and hopeless was the body which was now doing its thing quietly, so quietly, in stealth. Seeking with his ears, he concentrated hard until he could catch the sounds of his heart in the pit of his stomach and the soles of his feet. He could feel his breathing in his brain, the blood seeping and welling in his private parts. He tried to silence every cell in his body until he could listen outside it to the proximate snoring of his father, which was like the murmuring of another universe. He heard birds shifting in sleep, the dropping, ticking, tutting, tipping, creaking, withering, falling sounds that stirred inside the earth. Towards the end of the night, he heard the hooter and the hummer. The toot-toot of the narrow-winged hooter owl merely brushed his ears. It took a good long time to wing its way closer, and only then did the sweetness reach him. The larger, more assertive hammer owl, who came less often, was more efficient in nabbing his prey and came moments before dawn to perch on the fence skirting the well. Its sound entered Anna's dreaming slumber. Was he hearing or was he dreaming? Come dawn, the birds gave him more listening practice. The chirping, chortling, cooing, whistling, laughing cacophony of dozens of bird variety were all too muted. Only the hornbill, that yellow beaked, broad chested, drunken flight specialist, who sang dulcet tones of soulful serenade that quickly changed into a strident chitter and exploded in a burst of severe scolding, could be heard with some certainty. And he was grateful. So that is Kaveri for you. That is the novelist who I would like to think the surgeon is taking a sneak peek at this experience and also helping her to make it vivid, this loss of hearing, what it means, how does it feel, and things like this. So this is the kind of writing she has done. And I was curious to know if you have a moment in the novel that you have liked, that you might want to read, giving a brief context to that part, that section.
I can't read too much or say too much without giving the story away.
Yeah.
But what happens in the book is that for various reasons, Devaraya's wife Gauru has to look after the family by herself because Devaraya has been sent to prison. And while he is in prison, of which we have several chapters of his prison years, and but while he is there, there are some certain things have happened to the family which she hasn't told him, and so this is when he has come back from prison, and everything should be very joyful, but her mind is restless because of the things she has hidden from him, and she's wondering, when she is going to tell him. So I'm just reading the brief bit about his comes home and, just soon after that. Gauru wondered when and how to tell Devaraya about Nanju's disappearance, of Anna being suspended from college, how to tell him about those intense party activities of Anna's. How could she destroy the happiness of her husband's release from prison? But she must tell him, maybe tomorrow or the day after. And then it happened sooner. Anna came home from Bijapur and the facts spilled out. What a jolt! Seated on the cot, his proud cot with its elaborate carvings and curved legs, Devaraya stared through the window at the champaka tree, its plenitude still intact, a faint fragrance of the flowers teasing. His face was only eyes, wide, thinking eyes. Gauru did not say a word. Anna did not say a word. A silent family conclave, a necessary family conclave. Nothing said, but everything understood. I've heated water for your bath, said Gauru, rising with a hand pressed on her husband's shoulder. Anna, bring some firewood. I'll get on with the rotis. The rotis were eaten cold that night. After his bath, Devaraya sat on the porch for a very long while. He had lived through the mortifying build-up to the trial and the malevolent asides of the pujari, and then the prison's term, the horror of cleaning latrines. All that he had withstood because of a hope. He had crowed to Raghuvira, another prisoner, about his sons. Not once or twice, but a dozen times. My sons are my two arms, he had said, my right arm and my left arm. Caste prejudice will be finished and forgotten by the time they complete college. They are going to do wonders, you watch. He carried this hope inside him every day, and at night he carried it into his sleeping dreams. And now, a sob escaped him. Stifling it, he got up and went in to eat. It did not matter that the rotis had gone cold.
So that was a high moment, emotionally in the book. Earlier, I talked about local stories. Here is a very short one paragraph story, which Kaveri tells me is something that actually happened in Madikeri. A potter named Malappa was ordered off the main street of Madikeri because a cart in which he carried coal to some hotels in town made too much noise. It disturbed the deputy commissioner's wife, Jane Peacock, who could not bear to be disturbed till an hour before noon. The local authorities were summoned and told that the cart must find another route or its services would be stopped, for the wheels sounded like they were grinding their way to hell. A few days later, Govinda met Mallappa. Govinda is one of the characters in this story, a younger man. Met Mallappa carrying the coal on his head. Your son hasn't come to school for a week, he said to Mallappa. Is he ill? Mallappa told him about the order concerning the use of his cart. Carrying coal on my head takes more time. The hotels have started looking for someone else to supply coal, which means there will be no money for Kabira's school books. Seized with indignation, Govinda wrote a letter to the local newspaper about the injustice. The letter was signed by several students and it created a sensation. Emboldened, Govinda and friends filed a petition in the local court. A lawyer from Bellary, famed for his oratory skills, offered his help. He spoke to Mallappa and saw the living conditions of the family. Describing it in court, he said that by preventing Mallappa from using his cart to ferry coal, his entire family was being denied their only means of subsistence. If Jane Peacock had trouble sleeping while Mallappa earned his livelihood, she could take the help of a sedative potion. Could she not? He won the case. Mallappa's cart resumed its journey through the main street of Madikeri, the clatter of its wheels sounding more like a victory drum than a grind towards hell. Jane Peacock left for England soon after, never to return. Govinda, the beak-nosed boy with bandy legs, whose small thin chest housed courage, was like Niranjana, another boy, a hero to all boys. Right? So, a story such as this. And there's just one more small excerpt I want to read, just to show, yeah, just to show, how much of an insider Kaveri is to the Kannada sensibility. So let me. Here is a reference to the Kanakambara flower, right? Nanju is the son of Devaraya, the elder son of Devaraya, a very sensitive, sensible, ethical kind of a person. And his sister, the third child is an adopted child who was grown with them, and her name is Chinni. So he looks at her. Nanju saw with a start that in her slenderness and countenance she held the flush of youth. Chinni was no longer a little girl. You know Kanakambara? The flower? It's an emblem of Kannada sisterhood that refuses to let go its claim of the long plaited hair on which to trail the soft orange funnel-shaped flowers. Strung on its own or with jasmine, Kanakambara adorns the tresses like none other. A flower so delicate and the plant commonplace. It thrives on ordinary soil. You will not notice the plant until the blooms appear. That's the way it is with girls. Unnoticed until the sudden unfurling. Kanakambara, the same. So, I'd like us to see it's not just the details, the story, that is Kannada here, Kaveri had to kind of break English, bend English to express the sensibility, right? And I think even Rajarao, for that matter, when he constructed, when he wrote Kantapura in 1938, said, because he was writing the story of a village, typical Kannada village near Hassan and so on. So he said, we cannot write like the English and we should not, right? So he kind of mythicized the whole thing, and there's a very high stylized, very self-conscious kind of an English that he uses to express that, to give you, imagine that village. But what we have here is a different kind of attempt. There is no self-consciousness here. I read you that Kanakambra passage, So it is so casual, so natural, so spontaneously flowing. And even in the passage that Kaveri read, Itardala, right? So I would like you to tell us, how did you manage this this magic of Kannadizing, your English so deeply and expands, as applied to the whole text?
As I said, when I was writing, I wasn't particularly conscious I was doing it. But like in a novel that is big, once you've got the flow and you're on a certain track and this novel will, carry on. So I just finished it. And then when I sent it to the agent and then the publisher, they were the ones who told me that this is, you've used English in a very different way, and this is, how did you do this? And then I became, as you say, self-conscious and thinking, what have I done? But I think what happens is, because Kannada is, very close to me, in the sense I'm quite versatile in Kannada, at least the speaking Kannada and thinking Kannada. I studied up to 12, until I was 12 years old. So, and I read a lot in Kannada. So, and now with patients in Karnataka, with family, with so many people, I do speak a lot of Kannada. And although my own dialect is little different to Kannada, Kodavatak, that is from Coorg, I think in my dialect also, I think in Kannada, I think in English. So there are different languages, and Hindi little bit when I was in the north. But with Kannada, and even when I use dialogue which is set in a certain part of the country, I try to have the dialogue in my mind in that language, and then when I write it, it seems to change. It happens internally, of course. I don't have to write it and then I do it. It just happens. But but I think those of us who speak different languages, we are very lucky to have that gift of thinking in different languages. We have thought, in different languages.
Is it true of your writing right from the beginning? Like in Scent of Pepper, for instance? This novel, has there been a shift?
There has been Scent of Pepper had a different tone of voice, I think, because I was writing it. It is set in Kodagu, Coorg. So the whole thing is, although it is written in English, it is from my dialect mostly. And of course, Kannada. There is a little bit of Kannada, I don't think. But I don't think so much as over here. So perhaps I evolved, with my own writing. And also I feel like I've been thinking a lot about language. And you also made me think about it. So I feel language is perhaps the greatest gift that humans have. Language. I can't think of anything that's greater than language for us, because not only do we communicate, but it can travel. Language travels. And like with other beings, which also obviously communicate. But we can send language, through books and through various other media, everything, we are able to do that. So that's a fantastic ability that was given to us. And I feel we are fortunate as people who write and read. I think reading is as important as language, as the writing, because unless the reader has immersed in the book doesn't work, no? So until the readers are
Drawn
enjoying
into
or
it,
drawn into it and immersed in the story.
Yeah.
So that is the thing. So I feel that is the duty of the writer. I mean, probably I'm a little more careful about such things now. That is the duty of the writer to communicate clearly, and to be able to convey the meaning, to convey the emotions, everything.
Now, this is very liberating for translators like me who translate from Kannada into English to take this kind of liberties that you have taken, in the Kannada text that we translate. So I find this very useful and very inspiring kind of a change that has come into writing in English. And when Deepa Bhashti translated this book, and or when I translated Kuempu's book and your book, they all seem to be, in a kind of a continuum rather than two separate worlds, which is, I think, a very important shift or change that I find in our, writing practices. And that is a very unique kind of a development that Kanglish has arrived, So, like it's not just Indian English, it is each region, each state has its own English, and therefore, like Tamglish and Hinglish, we have Kanglish now, and that is kind of taking us forward as a better, medium to talk about life that is around us, So, is there anything else that we should? Yeah, I will say. Yeah, but there may not be time. So, but I had a more a different kind of question. You're married to Vijay Nambisan, who is also a writer, and so what was it like to share one's passion, for writing and for things literary within the family space?
It was great because I think I was fortunate that he comes from such a learned family. I mean, there are people who are, two of them are here. They're a learned family. They read a lot, all of them. And I mean, his mother, who's in her 90s, still reads avidly, not just reads, she reads avidly novels. And she reads both Malayalam and English. And it's lovely to discuss books and, but Vijay, of course, he was special. He was a very, very talented writer and poet. Of course, we are different types of writers. And it was we criticized each other's work. And, which was wonderful, I think. I learned a lot from Vijay about writing, about conveying what you want to convey. I mean, I was just, I think last week I found a letter he'd written to me when Scent of Pepper was, So at that time, I just gave him the first 3 chapters, I'd posted them to him. And he's read them and then he's said, I like it very much. And then he's given me his criticisms. I like it very much and all that, little bit of praise, but then the criticisms came and the points, and they're so good. I mean, I was reading them now and I was thinking, gosh, they're so, every point is so perfect, that what he told me. And I did absorb, of that. So I think there is a lot that can happen between two writers. Yes. And we were comfortable in each other's, criticisms, everything. So it was a good experience, and it is
wonderful to hear that. Now, of course, I have a lot more things that we could be talking about, like the process and so on.
Very nice to hear about. See, you are a doctor and you are also a storyteller. That's why this question, sorry, like it may be off the track. In the beginning of the conversation, you people said that one cannot fool children while telling a story.
Sorry, I couldn't.
One cannot fool children while telling a story. So I just wanted to ask you, like, if there is a death in a family, like a grandparent dies or something like that, as a storyteller, how would you convince a 4-year-old kid or something? Like, what do you tell? Like, if you have come across something like that, as a storyteller, can you please?
Sure. That's a very deep question, really. Very difficult thing to do, to convey a very sad news to a child. But we all have to do it at some stage in our lives, and some of us as children may have faced. I saw the first death of my father's elder brother, who was at that time 51, and it was here in Bangalore, and he died of a cancer. But I remember as a child, it was not conveyed separately to each of us. We just sort of came to know about it because the grief was all everywhere in the house. And we sort of participated in that grief in the way children participate. So I think if there is a person, but I have had to go and convey death to my own daughter when my father died, to convey, and she was very young and in school. And I remember how hard it was. But I think the best way to do it is to sit with them and just tell them in the gentlest way possible that that person is no more. And instead of, trying to make up stories that it's okay if it is in a very difficult situation, like in an accident and suddenly it's happened, you can't tell them. But I think in other, moments, it is so much better for children to be told. Children are very strong and resilient. They are not, if we convey the truth, children are able to better handle crisis than when we hide it or we try to mellow it and say something else. For instance, if there is a child who wants to go on a school excursion, there are now these very expensive things that children are sent on, and the parents cannot afford. So a lot of parents, what they do first, when they ask, they say, yes, of course, just to make them feel okay. Then gradually they say, no, we can't do it. So that makes the child disbelieve parents, you see. So when you first said that, oh yeah, sure, like everybody else, yes, sure. And then you change it. So it is when we play double, when adults do it maybe to, for the sake of the child, or for a doctor to say, this injection won't hurt, or there will be no injection, and then you suddenly poke them. That's nasty thing to do. I think it's best to tell them that the injection is like a mosquito bite. That's what I usually do with children. Just hurts as much as a mosquito bite, and I just gently pinch, and say, look, just this much. As long as you don't move, it will be all right. So if you've told them, it is better. That is true in stories too, yeah.
Maybe I can just say quickly, add to this by saying I have 3 grandkids, and the last one is 4-year-old. And so there have been deaths around, the COVID time a little later and so on. And so by quite some accident, we started saying, yeah, they Vaikunt Samaradne anta ಮಾಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ where have they gone? That's the question. And so they've gone to Vaikuntha, because that's where we have seen them often. So then is Tata also there? Yeah. Then sometimes, like when she's mischievous, I just pretend to call Vaikuntha and say, talk to my mother. Amma, parma, in the avani iptiyellam pandra. Then turning this side, I say, Emma avani, apdiyellam pannademma, like in my mother's voice. So Vaikuntha has become a lot of fun space, So the lie has kind of led to a great imaginary, of Vaikuntha. Lot of things happen there. One day she asked me, where is the address? And things like that. So all of that. So
like Santa Claus.
Yeah,
thing.
right.
Sure. Somebody
Yeah.
there.
Sure. So first of all, like the stories which you guys have mentioned, wonderful stories. And I have 3 questions. Honestly, the first one draws from your craft, and there are 2 tangential questions which you may or may not want to address. The first question is, when you're writing, when you're trying to convey a story and you have a concept or you have an idea in your head, you have a topic, right? and then you have multiple facets of that topic that you want to weave together. It could be an article, it could be a book, short proses, bigger books. How do you think about that? How do you sort of incorporate all of that together? So if I want to become a better storyteller or a better writer, and I want to write an article, how should I go about thinking the thought process of weaving multiple facets together so as to present a singular
multiple
picture?
what facets?
Multiple facets of the same topic or idea.
Yeah.
So that's my first question. And I have two different tangential questions. One draws from your domain of medicine and is also an avid part of the book, The Caste Realities of India, right? So recently there has been a news which was doing rounds where we saw multiple merit lists. And a very good example I have is from Haryana. There's a medical college, and there was a merit list regarding their PGs, right? So the ones from the general caste or unreserved categories sort of got their admissions on a 550 on 800 or something around those. And then there were reserved candidates who got maybe an admission at 5 on 800. And there was a very hefty discussion online that how do you sort of address the caste realities of India so as to sort of alleviate and that social upward mobility, but at the same point of time not create doctor deaths. And solution was given that the government will have exit examinations, right? But from a PG sense, when they come from an MBBS background, if they are getting a 4 out of a 800, how much sense does that make to you, or what are the possible solutions to address that?
The first question, I think, is more relevant right now. So, if you're a storyteller and you want to write, especially a novel, but even for a short story, I think it's important to just let the idea, whatever you have, to stay in your mind, just to be there and live with it for some time. Not hurry to put it down. Just let it be there, and you'll find that once you have got something, maybe a phrase, maybe a sentence, maybe, or a situation or a character, it'll and you leave it, it'll slowly gather, moss, like you say, it gathers things. Like if you have one man in a village and then you'll create his family for him, that type of thing, or a school, whatever it may be. So you want to create the scene, but you do it in your head. I mean, I prefer to think about my novel for usually 6 months to 1 year. And when I don't write anything, but I'm thinking, and I don't do it like very focused all the time, but I do keep a notebook in which I jot down something or the other, some phrases, some names, some dates, something like that, or maybe even a small passage of what I should put in. That type of thing. So as you do that, the story must first excite you. You must get that feeling of excitement. Okay, there is something here that I can tell. So then you'll feel a sort of restlessness about it, that okay, I think I want to put it down. So you must give it time. I don't think it's necessary to be very formal and make chapters and all this. You can have it all in your mind, more or less, vaguely, and then you start writing. I mean, that is my way, because I feel ideas come rapidly when you keep it in your mind and then you just jot notes instead of straight away trying to write it. You might go off in a simplistic way. So the more you keep it in your mind, the more complex, the complexity of real life will enter it. Because if you've got a character, then you want to really have that character to become real life in your mind, in your head. That takes time, because you have to understand the character from all angles. So you do that, and bit by bit, I think characters take the longest time to create sort of really good, solid characters. And whether they are good or bad, they all take time to create. And once that's done, then you put them in a situation as the story goes, and how does that character react to such and such a situation? What happens to him or her? And that's how the story develops. I think important not to be too self-conscious about it until you've done the first draft at least, and then focus. Yes. As for the caste question, I think I'm not the best person to answer it. It is a very, very long and a very big topic and discussion. So perhaps this is not the place, where we can talk, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I realize.
Namaskara and thank you. Namaskara and thank you to both of you and to BIC for this fascinating conversation. I have followed your work for the past, I think, 25 years when Scent of Pepper first came out, and I still remember scenes from the book. Like, I'm remembering today a person who dies because a Russell Viper gets into his gumboot in the rain. Yeah, so suddenly that scene was coming back to me when I heard you speak, and it's a pleasure to see you in person and actually hear you speak and understand the thought process behind it. And so too for Ms. Vanamala. I was there for the Kuvempu discussion when you talked about the translation and the effort that went into it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, and more power to you. Really enjoy your work. So
Thank you. very
just a
much.
comment and not a
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Hi, Kavery. Nice to see you again. I just wanted to ask you, it's not that I'm trying to be a writer, but for an aspiring writer of a young age, at what stage do you think they should go to a workshop? Or does the workshop change your thinking of a
Work-
creative writing?
Workshop is just not at all an essential. No, workshop is not an essential. What I did in Iowa, for instance, was a fellowship that you got. I mean,
Yeah.
you were invited to go there and spend 3 months along with other writers from different parts of the world. That was a wonderful experience because this shared experience between writers. How often do we get the opportunity to meet other writers? It's not so. Especially if you're living in a remote place like me, I don't get to meet, that many people. So a workshop is a new thing, new thing that nowadays they have creative writing workshops.
Yes.
We didn't attend any workshop. We
That's
just
interesting.
we didn't. We
Abraham
just learned.
Verghese, when he wrote The Covenant of Water, he had actually attended the
Iowa. He did the
Iowa thing as well.
Iowa.
That's what interested me.
That's a fellowship. They don't teach you writing.
Yeah.
What you have made to do is you twice a week you meet. The writers all live in one residence, and you interact informally while you're doing your own writing. They just leave you to do your writing. That's all. But twice a week you have to participate in events like this, and in those events, your turn will come to speak also. And
So you
you'll
actually
be given a
exchange
topic. You'll have to write a long essay, and you have to present the essay to the others, not just your group, but there will be a lot of others who come and attend these functions. So you learn public. I suppose you do some public speaking, but more than that, you write about the topic that's been given to you, and there will be about 4 writers will be given the same topic. So each time it will be about 4 writers presenting. That type of thing. Then we also had to go to other universities and talk to, sort of teach other students, their undergraduates and postgraduates in English. So it was all that type of an exchange thing, it was not a workshop. Workshops are there now. They have existed in the West, but I think in India it is not that common, is it?
Not yet.
Not yet, but it will come. What it does is it tells you the craft, the techniques. The techniques of writing can be taught. You can teach technique,
But
but
do you
you
think there is
can't teach the creative.
But do you think that will actually dampen the creativity if you go into a particular channel?
I'm not. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule about these things, because person who just wants to write and who hasn't wants to write and wants to do it quickly, maybe it'll be an easier way of learning. But we all learned just by I think the best workshop is reading books. Honestly,
I would endorse
be
that
better
fully.
than that?
Yes, yeah.
What could be better than reading?
Yeah.
And reading widely, not just reading the type of books you want to read, but reading different types of books, all types of books, fiction, non-fiction, thrillers, everything. So if you read newspapers, so if you read widely, I think that is the best workshop for a writer, definitely.
Hi. First of all, thank you for a very intimate session on Rising Suns. I was really looking forward to it. My question is, is something that I often wonder because I'm also writing a novel. When you're writing about the past, and we are in a different time right now, right? And we have a fair idea of what is happening in the present, and perhaps also a fair idea about what will happen in the immediate future. Does this knowledge make you disillusioned about your writing? That's one question that I wanted to ask you.
I think we are in an increasingly difficult space for creative work of any sort, because you can't have creativity in any form without the freedom of expression, you see. And anything that dampens that creative expression will only put us back several decades, I think. And I mean, of other countries which have gone through this. I have been in Shanghai for as a writing residencies where they call you, and we were again writers from different countries, and my husband and I both were there, and there are the Chinese writers too, so we were supposed to interact, and we were really so surprised by how they are not allowed to answer any searching questions. They can't talk like this, they cannot talk at all about, it's all very tailor-made sort of thing. So I think what we have to guard as creative people, but at the same time, I think we are going to go through difficult times. That is my feeling, but keep your feet on the ground and keep writing. Yeah.
Yes.
All the best.
Yeah.
And it'll break through. I'm an optimist, by the way. So I think that will break, finally.
I'll also thank you very much for this lovely discussion. One observation is that you seem to know the mind of the adolescent very well. You have described it very well, the children growing up, the way they interact with other growing children, and their role in society, finding their feet in a society. I think that's really very well described. While I must put out the disclaimer that I've read just 50% of the book, I want to just ask you the question. You said you're not the right person to talk about caste, okay? But you also mentioned that you come from rural Karnataka. You stay in rural, and so what I'd like you to tell is whether you've really seen it the way it is you have described it in the book, and while in the urban setup, as the gentleman behind said, that the only time we come across caste, forgive me if I make a mistake, is during the reservation for admissions to colleges and things. That's when we think of caste. Otherwise, by and large, in the urban society, I think there's less of talk about this. But the entire novel is based on that, and the ramifications of that with each individual's life. Of course, extreme poverty and the Varna system, you have to do this kind of work and things. You must have had some objective in narrating a story, which is what this talk is about, telling the story. Did you expect anything to come out of it from thinking about this system and the way of life in the rural area in particular?
See, to put it in a short thing, caste troubles me a lot. I'm troubled by the fact that we should have caste. And it's, I think, in urban space, probably because we all live in our own private worlds, of privilege and so on, different sections. I think we may not see it as clearly as we see it in the villages, but I think it exists everywhere. And it may not be, it won't be visible until you enter that space. And we come from a position of privilege, don't we? Most of us. have privilege of education. It's not just caste, there are other things. We have been privileged by our education, stable family lives, safe period in the history of our country. I mean, so many things that we have been fortunate about, and we have the capacity to read things other than our professional or whatever. So we are in that, and then caste seems a remote thing. But if you really go and live, like I live in a village, and I've lived now for 10 years in a very small village, and I do know the complexities that caste plays every day in the school, in the hospital, in the little clinic where I work, in everything, it is there. And that is what troubles me, because I think we can do, I think what I feel is each person must do something about it. If you see it and you can address it, we can't address everything, but we can address some things. And I think we have to, my way would be to fight it where I can see it, or at least confront it, or try to convince people about the effects that it has on other people. Yeah. Yes, sure. The real education, not just degrees, but education about people. Yeah.
Shanti, you had a question? No? Yeah. Okay.
Media, we are finding very interesting words coming up. So
What
do you think it
happens?
is-
Yeah. What has happened is, even in India, I think they're trying to bring some laws about AI, the use of AI and creativity, because can you just pluck creativity and feed it to AI, and you can just replicate? Yeah. You can do scenes, you can do things like if you wanted to write a beautiful travel piece on going on a trip to Kodagu, you could do it with just using AI and not ever having stepped there. So you can do things with AI, technically speaking, but creativity is not possible through AI. That I'm very sure. And but there are people who are writing lots and lots using AI. I personally feel it is okay up to a point where technical thing, not in novels or, I don't think AI has a place there, personally speaking. I don't know, things may change. But I think if you're doing other work, work related, where it's going to speed up your work and make it quicker and more efficient, like in a business, particularly. Yes. And I think each country now is having working on bringing laws about how AI can be used, and that you have to specify that this is AI generated. Or it should be like, suppose I wrote this novel using AI. In some parts, I have to say Kavery Nambisan plus AI. No, that I think that then it's all right, because the reader who picks up the novel knows that it's not just this female who wrote it, it's AI also. So then that's okay. I mean, I'm only talking of a future I don't know, because AI might change so many things. Yes.
If there is time, I'd like to share a moment of envy I felt about Kaveri. In translating Kuvempu's novel, which I did the year before, this word panche, is a common word in our languages, and panche is different from dhoti. Dhoti is worn differently from panche, and that's different from lungi, right? These three, have different visual images, and also the colors are different, and the way it is worn is different. And who wears a dhoti as opposed to who wears a lungi, and as opposed to who wears a panche. There is a class and caste marker, there is. And so it is a subtle thing. But I didn't know what to, the only available word 2 years ago for me in English was dhoti. Pancha was not there. And if it is not there in the standard dictionaries, you can't usually use that word. That's the kind of the rule of thumb that we have. So I looked up the different dictionaries. It didn't give me panche. But here is Kaveri. blithely using panche and telling you a nice story also about it. How in one of the villages, like in Kodugu, one day the one child in the school comes to school in a panche rather than shorts, and then the Mr. Balone, the Anglo-Indian, no, British teacher, he says, no, you can't come in this dress because this is no dress for civilized people and so on. So the child goes back and tells his father, but the father insists, no, this is the dress for Vidwans and so on, so it's fine. And so the child, so there is some kind of other children interact and so on. And finally they decide that because shorts costs money, much more money, stitching and maintaining and so on, whereas panche is easier to, and that's part of their lived experience already, and they have panches at home. So it's more viable, and therefore the first, after some time, 4 or 5 children start wearing panches. So then Mr. Balone doesn't know what to say. And finally, the whole class wears panche. So there's a whole reference to panche in this text. And how, nicely she has, there is not one single footnote here in this novel. In a rooted novel like this, because we translators are always cribbing, we have to give so many footnotes for so many culturally, rooted expressions and so on. Here is a culturally rooted text which doesn't give you a footnote. Then how does she manage? So she, even before she goes into the And where is that quotation from? A booklet on education and administration of schools in India had this detail she weaves in. It's a quotation from that book. Panche is a long, wide piece of cloth known as the panche, dhoti or lungi, held up with a knot around the waist. The free lower end skirts over the ankles, or it is folded knee high and secured with a loosely slung knot in front. At times, it is woven in a most uncouth fashion between the legs, right? So, this is the kind of note you have, and it's part of the narrative, right? So, I find that so charming that she has managed to sort of say all this much, and the kind of colonial attitude to a desi dress, right? And then the master gets it in full measure when the whole class comes in panche, and he has to accept that as a so there's a Gandhi in the making in this small episode that she has narrated in this part of the text. So that way, I feel a text like this has many lessons and many new ground covered. Some new ground covered in terms of language use and the kind of ease with which she has, used language to convey this different reality. I was very, it's very enviable for people like me. I just wanted to share this with you.
I haven't read your present book, but if I may, I want to ask you a question. Generally, a creative work is never revised. I find lots of differences in your first edition of Scent of Pepper and the second one. Well, you're the author and you're entitled to it, but can you give me some basis or reasoning for it?
Yeah. It was coming out in another edition. The book was coming out in another edition, I think about 10, 15 years later. And we decided to incorporate new things in the book. There is a new chapter actually in Scent of Pepper in the second edition. So it was just something between publisher and the writer. It was the same story, but we decided to incorporate another chapter. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you read both versions. Yes, yes. Okay, okay.
There's one small detail I want to mention. It taught me something new. Yesterday, I was complaining to her about a character she's created called Chinni, right? This is the girl who the family, Devaraya's family adopts. She is born to a tribal couple, a mixed couple, and therefore, like she doesn't fit into uh, any type of character that we know. One moment she's like this, one moment she's another. She's so I was trying to grapple with what kind of character is this, who I'm unable to fully understand and predict which way she's going to go or which way she's going to grow, right? So I asked her, who is this Chinni? What kind of character is this? Why is it that she defies all definition, right? And you want to answer that about the secret?
Yeah, I
soul?
mean, Chinni was, as you yourself said, she's an adorable character. But she is not like, most people. She does unpredictable things. But although the book is called Rising Suns, it is also about women. There are women characters in this book who are very strong and who actually, do things according to their convictions within what society allows them. And Chinni is one such. And there is a sort of love story that goes through this book, and what I feel about Chinni, like when she asked me, I was thinking that Chinni is perhaps, there are a lot of things characters do that the author may not know why the character does it, because you've created a character and you've given them certain attributes and they will follow that. So Chinni was definitely one of those, who was very difficult to control.
Yeah, yeah.
For me also. But I think characters like this, or there are moments in a novel which is like a secret center in a book, or like if there's something dark, there is a glow, there is something glowing, and you don't know what is glowing, but you're sort of aware of it. So that is what Chinni is.
Yes.
She's something you cannot define, but she is a core of the book. She's very, very important person in the book. So, but that's the way life is. We have people who are adorable and yet we cannot understand why they did what they did. You see, but so this is one such
I'd like to really thank you for this very enlightening, discussion today on your craft, on your vision, on your, way of handling your theme. All of this has been very interesting for all of us. And
thank you.
for this book. And let me congratulate you on this rather ambitious kind of an attempt. And it's a great attempt. And I hope all of you will make time and read it and enjoy it as much as I have reading it and she has writing it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vanamala. Thank you.